Good evening. This is Mottek On Money, number one for your business and consumer news here on Talk Radio 790 KABC. I'm Frank Mottek, and we're doing it live right here weeknights in the 5 o'clock hour in Los Angeles. Good evening. Mottek On Money 5 nights a week for you, live on the air here on 790 KABC, streaming live online worldwide at KABC.com, and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast at KABC.com, Apple, iTunes. And we're on the socials, too, at Frank Mottek on Twitter and Instagram and Threads, maybe. Feeling hot, hot, hot? Get into that conga line. Yep, it's hot today in Southern California. What else is hot again? The stock market in rally mode, hitting new highs for the year. All of the major averages are the highest we've seen in about 15 months. Banks and tech stocks leading today's rally on the latest earnings news. The Dow coming in for a closing gain of nearly 400 points. The S&P 500 of 32. The NASDAQ gained 109. The Dow ended higher for the seventh trading day in a row, and all the major averages are now at the highest we've seen since April of last year. More banks reported earnings news, including Bank of America today, moving higher by about 4.5%. Morgan Stanley popped 6%, and BNY Mellon gained 4%. Interactive Brokers, meanwhile, moved up 3%, and Charles Schwab also had a good day, up 13%. Defense contractor Lockheed Martin pulling back 3%, also releasing its earnings news. Microsoft at a record high after the software behemoth set higher than expected prices on artificial intelligence-powered software. According to MarketWatch, the stock's gains added more than 100 points to the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Can you believe it? Next week, the Fed will be meeting again to discuss a potential interest rate hike. That's the expectation of another 0.25% hike in the benchmark Fed funds rate, which will be impacting, among other things, credit card rates and home equity lines of credit. Meanwhile, not all rainbows and ice cream cones. Consumers back in focus, with June retail sales showing a meager, below than expected increase as consumers cope with the Fed's rate hikes and questions about what's next for the economy. And, of course, inflation still stubbornly high as well. And the hot labor summer continues in Los Angeles with 20,000 members of the WGA and 160,000 members of SAG-AFTRA on strike, shutting down Hollywood productions. We passed by one of the studios lately. A lot of picketers out there. SAG-AFTRA granting approval to 39 independent productions to shoot during the strike after confirming they're not tied to AMPTP companies. China's economy hitting the skids. The Chinese foreign minister, meanwhile, has apparently disappeared. Speculation swirling about why he's missing in action. 100-year-old former U.S. Secretary of State Dr. Henry Kissinger is back in Beijing. And President Biden's so-called climate czar and former Secretary of State John Kerry has also visited China for talks on climate change with China's communist government. We'll discuss the latest news on China tonight with Gordon Chang, China expert, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. What's the latest on real estate and mortgage rates? Well, we did get some new readings today. The Home Builder Sentiment Index increased for the seventh month in a row. The shortage of existing homes for sale helping to pump up builders' outlooks, but high mortgage rates around the 7% mark and questions about the Fed's next move, reasons for caution. We'll find out more tonight when we talk to Jeff Lazerson for a laser focus on real estate and mortgage rates. Jeff Lazerson, the president of MortgageGrader.com and also Orange County Register real estate columnist. But first, on the markets, the economy, crypto, AI, the Fed, inflation, the whole works. Joining us live now is Dr. J, as he's known on the major financial networks, John NAJARIAN, co-founder of Market Rebellion, and he has the laser eyes on, too, following the cryptos. John NAJARIAN, it's always great to have you with us. When you're on, it's always a very big day, and we always appreciate it. Take it from the top and give us your impressions of this rally here.
Well, very impressive. As you said, Frank, the consumer demand for certain goods and services has been waning, but that's exactly what the Fed wants. And the likelihood that we get back down to 2% on the inflation rate is not very high, the likelihood of that. But the fact that we are moderating and moving back down towards more neutral rather than a rising inflation is certainly something that the stock market has been hanging its hat on. And if you want to say climbing the wall of worry, well, yes, they are. And yes, the market does appear to still have more gas in the tank.
That is very well said. And, of course, coming off that banking turmoil, I guess people avoided the word crisis, but certainly with a couple of big 2-3 bank failures earlier this year, that was certainly a wall of worry that needed to be climbed. But looks like the banks have made it through here. What about the banks at this point?
Well, the Bank of America earnings were good. Morgan Stanley, I know, not really a bank, more of a wealth manager and brokerage, but nonetheless referred to and under the protection of banking, those and Goldman Sachs. I think the numbers that they put up, even though profits were down double digits over a year ago, nonetheless, the idea at Morgan Stanley that wealth management hit a new record high, that was something that the markets also applauded. And many of these banks and or brokerages or whatever you want to call them, you've already named Interactive Brokers, Schwab, and so forth, they continue to do very well in this environment because they can charge a little more for the margin interest, and they can keep a lot of the excess capital, making a little more money on the deposited funds. So this has been pretty much a win-win for most of those brokerages.
On there live with Dr. John NAJARIAN, and one big fly in the Chardonnay appears to be commercial real estate. John, commercial real estate price drop only getting started, says analyst at Morgan Stanley. Commercial real estate billionaire Barry Sternlicht's firm just defaulted on $212.5 million at an Atlanta office tower. Looks like a record Miami land sale has collapsed amid commercial real estate slowdown in downtown Miami. We see a waterfront property there, deal collapsing. So in that hot market, what do you see here on what's happening in commercial real estate and the potential impact on banks and the overall economy?
Well, we still have a very difficult time getting people back to work in the office buildings. And so many of the support units around those people that work in offices, everything from dry cleaners to many of the places where people would go for lunch or coffee or a host of things, those first stories of many buildings are just not able to command the same numbers if they even are getting regular payments on the rent that's owed. So that's a big negative for commercial real estate. And I'm not surprised even somebody as shrewd as Barry Sternlicht can't avoid the idea that if you can't get enough people to come back to work in office spaces and so forth, you really can't sell or refinance, because when you go to the bank to do exactly that, some of the things that they're looking for are the rents increasing? No, we're getting less for rent. We're having to undercut ourselves and our competitors, and that's not what the mortgage origination people or the people that would extend lines of credit want to hear.
And certainly commercial real estate very much in focus in downtown Los Angeles, as well as in San Francisco, where I see the San Francisco Standard is reporting that San Francisco commercial property values may fall 40% in the next couple of years. So that is quite dramatic, and we're watching that very, very closely. And it looks like Elon Musk playing hardball with his landlord there at Twitter in the Bay Area. So we'll see how that impacts rents there, and as well as what's happening here in downtown. A lot of buildings are in financial trouble here, from what we understand. And on the social media front, John, I see you're on Threads now. What's been your experiences so far, and what about the Threads impact with Meta and how this is all playing out?
I think a lot of people, including me, wanted to avail themselves of it to at least take a look and see what it would be like. But it turns out that there's not nearly the interaction on Threads that there is on Twitter. And, you know, we could both create many different social media spots for people to go to. But if they don't hear anything back, they're just screaming into the wilderness. It's not really something that's sustainable. Right now, that is the case with Threads. He was smart enough to offer it to everybody that had an Instagram account, and maybe devious enough to make it such that once you do that, if you delete your Threads, you've deleted your Instagram account. So he's holding on to a fair amount of people, those 100 million that signed up initially just by accepting the invitation. But he is not seeing the interaction at all that they expected. And if that continues, they will not attract advertisers. And that's the whole reason that these platforms exist that are giving that away.
You have a big national following, of course. What's your favorite? Is it Twitter, Insta? What are you mostly using these days?
Oh yeah, I use both, but Insta is mainly just for entertainment. I'd say, Frank, for posting up content that people can consume that is something perhaps that might try to drive to a commercial site like Market Rebellion. But it seems that Twitter is much better at doing that. And also the same sorts of things as Twitter Spaces, which we just did tonight, another of our Twitter Spaces. Those are things that could end up being a huge plus for Mr. Musk. I don't mean to just be a cheerleader for him. I think he's a brilliant guy. But I think that Twitter Spaces is something that really is a killer app. And that's something that I'm not saying Twitter needs to be saved, but it's certainly something that will help Twitter in the long run.
And then you have good old LinkedIn, the professional social networking site run by Microsoft these days, with Microsoft stock hitting a record high today.
Yeah, and not surprising, when you're able to get $30 a month or whatever for the basic AI services that they're able to offer, on top of everything else that Microsoft has. That reoccurring revenue is what every investor looking at stocks in the tech space wants to see. And you're certainly seeing it with Microsoft. And I would bet that 6 months from now, the numbers will be staggering for what Microsoft's able to put out.
It looks like Meta has got a rival to ChatGPT now with Llama, right? What are your thoughts about what's happening on the AI front here at this point?
I'm a huge fan, and I love what they're able to do. I'm not thinking that they should be stifled in the innovation that they're going through right now. I think that this is going to be something that's pretty special, and I would certainly hope that America is at the forefront of it. I do think, though, that it will hit jobs in many cases, journalism jobs, jobs in advertising, a whole host of jobs in tech stocks and so forth. But I think those that learn how to use it, my daughter was just using it today. My daughter, Tristan, was experimenting with many of the image AI that she could use, and she was finding it very compelling.
On there live with John NAJARIAN, and of course on the cryptos. First of all, do you still have the laser eyes on? And we see Bitcoin back below 30K here. Give us your
Stacking Benjamins with Joe and his good friend OG not only has great financial insight, it's laid back with humor too.
Dollar cost averaging works because everything else doesn't. Let me put that a different way. But dollar cost averaging works every time. Just keep buying.
60% of the time, it works every time.
People spend a lot of time, OG, worrying about when to buy.
This is really simple. You should invest when you have the money, and you should withdraw the money when you need the money. Boom.
There it is.
I believe they call that a mic drop.
The Stacking Benjamin Show, available on YouTube or wherever you listen.
For a limited time, Sweet Deals is offering qualified listeners an exciting vacation. Spend 4 days and 3 nights at a luxury hotel in fun and fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada for only $99. Save more than $600. As part of the package, you'll receive $100 in free slot play, a $100 dining advantage card, and each guest will be booked in a suite. You'll be vacationing in luxury that's only available in Vegas. Attendance is required at a presentation for vacation club ownership, but who cares? There's no purchase necessary, so it's a win-win. Plus, we offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Do not miss this exclusive luxury vacation offer from SweetDeals.com. That's 3 nights in a luxury Las Vegas hotel for only $99. Go to SweetDeals.com right now and snag this once-in-a-lifetime offer. That's SweetDeals.com.
What's going on in the crypto world?
Well, I think it will be a fight back and forth around the 30K level, until the Fed finally does go to a more permanent pause. That could be coming our way next Wednesday, Frank, on the 26th. So that's what I'm crossing my fingers on, And if indeed we don't see interest rates and higher payments for treasuries and so forth being a significant driver for people to skip past Bitcoin and various other cryptocurrencies, then I think they will flourish yet again, because the fact that Larry Fink at BlackRock is so adamant about Bitcoin becoming one of the biggest currencies ever, not just cryptocurrencies, one of the biggest currencies, I think is a reason to really embrace it.
And then there's this SEC action regarding Ripple. The securities regulator disappointed with the defeat over Ripple's XRP. What are your comments about what's going on with all that?
Well, I applaud Ripple for fighting that great fight, because many people would have rolled over and accepted some sort of a fine and various penalties, and they just refused to. So I think that was a very positive thing for cryptos, that they said, you can't just tell us at the 11th hour after we've done this that we are a security. We didn't do a securities offering, and they fought it and won. So, like I said, it was a multi-year fight, but they did prevail, and my hat's off to them.
On the air live with John NAJARIAN. Any specific places at this point, John, where you're putting money now or taking it off the table?
I like Goldman into the earnings, Frank, because of the wealth management numbers that Morgan Stanley was able to put up. I do think that Mr. Solomon's time at that firm, David Solomon, CEO of Goldman Sachs, I think his days are numbered. And if I were him, I would hope to be able to step away rather than be pushed out. But I do think they'll put up good numbers, Frank. I think that Netflix will put up just astonishingly good numbers now that they're back to cutting out many of the people who weren't paying for the service and instead piggybacking, sharing these accounts. I think that's one of the significant drivers for them. And it's not over yet. That will continue for years. And I think they also, in a writer's strike environment, probably have some of the deepest book of business, meaning that they have probably more shows and movies than anyone, of the sort that people want to watch. Because many of these other streamers, yeah, they might have the entire Disney catalog, but how many times are you going to watch Pinocchio? So I know Star Wars and Marvel and those others are really their bread and butter, but again, same thing. How many times are you going to watch that versus how much can you watch of all that different content that Netflix provides?
We should probably put that on social media. How many times can you watch Pinocchio? That would be a good question to put out to the general public. Now, John, let me ask you this. Are you touching any of the battered media stocks with Hollywood shut down because of the strikes at this point?
Well, I would still think that live sports is one of the areas that's immune to that, of course, since most of it is not does not have to be composed by writers and so forth. Doesn't mean that people at ESPN wouldn't cross the line or, wouldn't honor that picket line. But I would think that Disney, given that we're heading into their busiest season right now, I mean, we're in the midst of it now, but obviously many of the tickets were bought a month or 6 weeks ago prior to people heading down to Disney World and so forth. So that would be one of them, other than Netflix. One of them that I would pick would be Disney here in the mid-'80s.
Are we going to see it at any of the big conferences coming up soon?
I'm sure you will. I'll let you know as soon as I book out my fall schedule, Frank.
Fantastic, John. Thank you very much for joining us here live this evening in Los Angeles and 790 KBC. John, have a wonderful evening.
You too, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is John NAJARIAN, Dr. J, as he's known on the major financial networks, co-founder of Market Rebellion, and, of course, following the Cryptos 2 live with us here tonight on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. It is jarring to have a car accident and hard to think clearly when you're hurt. So my friend, attorney Clark Fielding of Fielding Law, has created something to help you, a guide called Be Prepared Before a Motor Vehicle Accident. The guide is one page, fits in your glove compartment, and gives you everything you need in case you're hurt in an accident. Go to clarkthesharklaw.com and download your free one-page guide and keep it right there in your glove box. And put Clark Fielding's number in your phone right now under the word accident. So all you have to do is hit the number when you need him. Tell your family and friends to do the same. So if you're hurt in an accident, call the one we all trust, Clark Fielding. The number is 833-88-SHARK. That's 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK. And download the Be Prepared Before a Motor Vehicle Accident Guide at ClarkTheSharkLaw.com. That's ClarkTheSharkLaw.com. One more time, ClarkTheSharkLaw.com. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KBC. Good evening. We have a rally today with the Dow up 367 points at the closing bell at 34,952. The S&P 500 of 32 points at 4,553. And we see the NASDAQ up 109 points at 14,354. The yield in the 10-year note, which impacts fixed-rate mortgage rates, down to 3.79%. We'll get an update on real estate and mortgage rates coming up in the next half hour with Jeff Lazerson for a laser focus on what's happening in real estate and the mortgage business. He'll be joining us, president of MortgageGrader.com, and also Orange County Register real estate columnist. In the cryptos, we see a Bitcoin up about 30 now at 29,827. Ethereum up $1 at 18.95, and Doge at 7 cents. Microsoft stock hitting a record high today. We see gas prices in Los Angeles still stubbornly high. Regular gas now $4.99 an average in the LA Long Beach area, $5.33 the average price for premium, and diesel now at $5.20 a gallon. I tweeted this out earlier. Our gas prices are higher than Honolulu, in the middle of the ocean in Hawaii. $4.55 the average price for regular gas in Honolulu. $4.99 is the average price here in Los Angeles. Things that make you go, Now the latest news for you right here on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KBC. Nervous time on the Korean Peninsula again, with North Korea launching 2 ballistic missiles eastward. Japan's and South Korea's militaries announcing this just hours after U.S. ballistic missile submarine arrived in a South Korean port for the first time in 4 decades. According to the Reuters news service, both of the missiles appear to have fallen outside of Japan's exclusive economic zone. According to the Japanese Defense Ministry, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff called on the North to cease such launches. In the meantime, we're also watching what's happened to an American soldier who served nearly 2 months in a South Korean prison, fleeing across the heavily armed border into North Korea. He became the first American detained in the North in nearly 5 years. Private Second Class Travis King had been held on assault charges and was released on July 10th after serving his time. He was being sent home to Fort Bliss, Texas, where he could have faced additional military disciplinary actions and discharge from the U.S. service. Meanwhile, China's economy hitting the skids these days. The Chinese foreign minister, meanwhile, has disappeared. Mysterious circumstances, speculation swirling about why he's missing in action. 100-year-old former U.S. Secretary of State Dr. Henry Kissinger is back in Beijing. And President Biden's climate czar and former Secretary of State John Kerry has also visited China for talks on climate change with China's communist government. A lot to talk about now with China expert Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War, and on Twitter at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, thank you very much for joining us live here this evening. First of all, your reaction to the breaking news here on what's happening with North Korea launching more missiles this evening.
Well, those missiles, as you pointed out, were in retaliation for an American ballistic missile submarine, the USS Kentucky, docking at Busan. We don't like actually putting our boomers up into ports in Asia or anywhere else except where they're home ported. But South Korea has essentially demanded this. And this was part of the Washington Declaration that South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol signed with President Biden in April in Washington. South Korea is very nervous about America's ability to protect South Korea. They're worried about President Biden's nuclear weapons doctrine. And so this was needed assurance for South Korea.
Are things heating up again there on the Korean Peninsula?
They could. Remember that we're going to the 70th anniversary of the Korean War armistice. That occurs on the 27th. The North Koreans are going to make a big deal of this with ceremonies in Pyongyang. They could do something, and obviously this is a time of great interest in Korea, where both Koreas are very much dependent on that armistice being maintained. North Korea at various times has abrogated the armistice, said it no longer is in existence, but they've continued to adhere to it, which is a good thing. And of course, the United States takes the position that the armistice is still in effect.
All right, and this is a rather bizarre story. A troubled U.S. soldier who was being sent home from South Korea blended in with a group of tourists bound for the DMZ when he bolted across the border into North Korea. What do we know about what happened there?
Well, the North Koreans right now hold him. They are going to make big propaganda out of this, largely because it coincides with that 70th anniversary. I think the United States should expend no efforts to try to get back Travis King. Let him stew in North Korea. It's one of the worst societies on earth. He's made his choice. Let him stay there. Isn't
that something? Turning to China now, the latest reports indicate China's economy is hitting the skids. New concerns about its impact on the global economy. Give us an update on what you're seeing there.
On Monday, the National Bureau of Statistics reported 6.3% growth in the second quarter over the same period last year. Although that number sounds high, it was well below expectations, and it shows that the Chinese economy is slowing. I think that number is overstated. When we look at underlying indicators, we see a Chinese economy which is around 0, maybe 1% growth, if that. The problem here for China is that
Stacking Benjamins with Joe and his good friend OG not only has great financial insight, it's laid back with humor too.
Dollar cost averaging works because everything else doesn't. Let me put that a different way. But dollar cost averaging works every time. Just keep buying.
60% of the time, it works every time.
People spend a lot of time, OG, worrying about when to buy.
This is really simple. You should invest when you have the money, and you should withdraw the money when you need the money. Boom.
There it is.
I believe they call that a mic drop.
The Stacking Benjamin Show, available on YouTube or wherever you listen.
We're all juggling life, a career, and trying to build a little bit of wealth. The Brown Ambition podcast with host Mandy and Tiffany the Budgetnista can help.
HGTV's Paige Turner.
People are wanting to buy a home. Is it a buyer's market? Is it seller's market? Is it neither?
It's neither. If you're in a position to buy a home, and if it makes more sense to own than to rent at this time in your life, then buy the house. Just don't buy the house thinking in 6 months you're going to make a $400,000 profit off of it, because that's not there anymore.
Brown Ambition.
Wherever you listen.
They've come to the end of what they can accomplish with their state-dominated system. The June numbers were truly awful, and we're going to see the Chinese economy continue to decline unless there's an enormous stimulus package. Beijing has not indicated it would do that, but even a big stimulus package would only temporarily delay the problems that are facing China right now. And under Xi Jinping's state-dominated system, there are no solutions to what's going on in the Chinese economy.
On the You're Live with China expert Gordon Chang. Interesting story here, Gordon. I know you're following this. The Chinese foreign minister has not been seen in public for 3 weeks, which is quite unusual. What do you think is happening there?
Yeah, Qin Gang has not been seen since June 25th. He is considered to be a favorite of Xi Jinping, so his disappearance is especially unusual. The rumors are that he was caught with a reporter from Phoenix TV in a honey trap. Who knows what's going on, but the point is that you'd expect the foreign ministry to be more forthcoming about the disappearance of Qin Gang. Some people have said, and it's been officially stated, that there are health reasons, but even the foreign ministry has taken those health reasons explanations off its website, which is a real indication that this is more political health than real health.
And this at a time, a busy time of diplomatic activity in Beijing with Dr. Henry Kissinger, the 100-year-old former U.S. Secretary of State. Dr. Kissinger, who, of course, was with President Nixon back in the day and broke the ice between the U.S. and China, back in Beijing and making some comments. What are your impressions of this visit?
This visit is not good for the United States. He was meeting with the Chinese defense minister, who is under U.S. sanctions. No American should do that. And clearly, we're not going to see very much in the way of progress from China. Kissinger on June 7th gave an interview to Bloomberg saying that war between China and the United States is, quote unquote, probable. He believes something must change, but China is becoming even more militant. The Biden administration's approach to China has not worked. This is one of the most consequential moments in history, if not the most consequential. And Henry Kissinger's visit is not going to help things.
And according to one report, The Guardian, British newspaper is reporting that according to a readout from the Chinese Defense Ministry today, they said friendly communication between China and the U.S. had been destroyed because, Quote, some people in the United States did not meet China halfway, unquote. Kissinger said he was a friend of China, according to the readout. Neither the U.S. nor China can afford to treat the other as an adversary. If the two countries go to war, it will not lead to any meaningful results for the two peoples. The Chinese statement reported Dr. Kissinger as saying. Any further comment on that?
Dr. Kissinger has never been candid. The reason why there is tension, because China wants there to be tension. China's been pressuring its neighbors. It is now trying to break apart the Philippines. And unfortunately, Dr. Kissinger is not willing to tell the Chinese that they've got to cut it out. He always talks even-handedly, as if this was just some sort of dispute. No, it's not. It's greater than that. And unless Kissinger can be candid and have frank conversations with China, we're not going to get anywhere.
Meanwhile, another former U.S. Secretary of State who now serves as President Biden's so-called climate czar, John Kerry, also in China for talks, we understand, on climate change with Chinese authorities. Your reaction on those meetings?
Yeah, those meetings seem to be going along fairly well, but we don't expect any significant concessions by China or any promises by China in terms of accelerating its climate promises. These are basically trying to reestablish communication. The one thing that is wrong with Kerry's visit is that this is the third senior Biden administration official who has gone to China without a return visit by a senior Chinese official to Washington. You had Blinken, Yellen, and now Kerry. I think we need to have some reciprocity. The Chinese view this string of U.S. officials going to China as an acknowledgement that the U.S. acknowledges its subordinate position to China. That's not good, and that's not going to get us where we need to be. We need to have China respect the United States, and until it does, there's not going to be any progress.
Bottom line it for us, where do we stand with relations between the U.S. and China?
The relations, they're talking to each other, which Americans think is progress, but I actually think it's not. What the progress is China stopping doing some of the things that it is now engaged in, including at this very moment trying to break apart the Philippines at Reed Bank in the South China Sea. These are very dangerous activities on the part of China. The United States has been quiet about that. And I think the Chinese take that as the Biden administration not willing to confront China. It's unfortunate, but we have allowed this situation to get to a point where there are no good options for either side.
Gordon Chang, thank you very much for joining us live here tonight. That is Gordon Chang, China expert, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War, and on Twitter at Gordon G. Chang. Thank you very much for taking the call live with us here this evening.
Thank you.
Folks, don't give in to that constant joint pain. Take control. Take back your quality of life today with the help from QC Kinetics. It's Frank Mottek here. QC Kinetics helping people every day here in Southern California and all across the country with their amazing non-surgical treatments that repair and restore your damaged joint tissue. They use the latest advances in regenerative medicine, taking your own body's healing agents and concentrating them right in the area where you have that agonizing pain. This incredible non-invasive approach helps you take back control of your body, relieving the pain in your knees, hips, shoulders, or back. No invasive surgery, no harmful drugs or steroids, and no downtime. Summertime needs to be about having fun out there, making memories, golfing, hiking, enjoying the great outdoors. Take control now and start living pain-free again. Call QC Kinetics. Locations now in Glendale, the city of Orange, Mission Viejo, and now also in Costa Mesa. Call 213-997-PAIN. That's 213-997-PAIN, 213-997-PAIN. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KBC, turning now to real estate and the mortgage business. We did get a new reading out today from the Home Builders Confidence Index, increasing for the 7th month in a row. The shortage of existing homes for sale helping to pump up builders' outlooks, it seems, but high mortgage rates around the 7% mark and questions about the Fed's interest rate policy still reasons for caution. We're also watching what's happening with the big strikes continuing, the WGA strike and now the SAG-AFTRA strike as well, and its potential impact on local real estate and the mansion tax in Los Angeles. Luxury home sales have stalled in L.A. because of that so-called mansion tax, which is also impacting commercial real estate. Let's bring in the expert now for a laser focus on what's happening in the mortgage business and real estate. Jeff LAZERSON, the president of MortgageGrader.com and Orange County Register real estate columnist. Jeff, always great to speak with you. Give us your assessment of things here at the moment. And first, how are those mortgage rates looking?
Well, Frank, the mortgage rates locally are looking a lot better than the Freddie rates. Last week, Freddie was at 6.96%. So I guess the big question is are they going to top 7% this week? If they don't do it this week, they're going to do it next week. We had a small rally earlier in the week, but it got choppy today. So locally, 6.25% on a 30-year fixed at one point. The 15-year fixed is at 5.75% at one point, and that's up to $726,200 from $726,201 to $1,089,300, and that's LA and Orange County only. The 30-year fixed is at 7% at one point, and the 15-year high balance is at 6.38% at one point. Jumbos are a little bit better, 6 5/8% at one point, and Fannie or FHA and VA are about 6% at one point. So, still up there and probably going higher.
All right, what do you think the Fed is going to do next week, and where do you see rates go from here?
Well, so Fed's going to move it up 1/4 point, and even though there's some, indicators that inflation is, easing, I'm still not sure that they're not going to keep going later this year. I'm just not convinced, because every time we turn around, there's a lot of mixed baggage with the inflation stuff. So I would say 1/4 now, and maybe another 1/4 later in the year, and that'll be it. So right now, for example, prime rate's at 8.25%. So next week when they meet or after they meet, it'll go to 8.5%, and then by end of the year or so, it'll be 8.75%, which is darn high.
All right. Of course, adjustable mortgages, which were out of fashion for quite some time because of the low fixed-rate mortgages, are they back in fashion now?
No, not at all. They're not one bit, Frank, because the short-term money is very expensive. We have this inverted yield curve going on, and I'm just looking at the 5-year ARM with Fannie Mae right now, this second, and it's 7 1/8% for a 5-year conforming. Well, the 30-year fixed is at 6.25%, so it's 7/8 of a point higher in rate. And it's only locked in for 5 years. So it is not happening.
All right. What about on the price front now? It looks like we've seen downward pressure now for a variety of reasons here in Los Angeles and elsewhere. What do you see ahead on the price front?
Well, so you were mentioning about the mansion tax, right, in LA, that it's 4% over $5 million now. And one of the things I'm hearing from my LA realtors is that, that end of the market is slowing down. Oddly enough, though, in Orange County, especially South Orange County, in the beach areas, it's really, those higher-end homes are doing really well down here. And in fact, the first time, Frank, and I've been reading the Wall Street Journal for 30 years, last Friday, and they have a section called Mansion, and it's all the, sort of the high-end homes around the country, around the world. The first time I ever recall, they did a whole spread on Dana Point, California, and South Orange County, and that was last Friday. And it's very telling, because I just think that area is it's hot, it's moving, and there was an article in the paper over the weekend. Josh Allen, the quarterback of the Bills, he just bought a beach house there for $7.2 million. So beach market is good. South Orange County is good. I went out Sunday hitting open houses. Frank, it was dead. First of all, there weren't very many listings to even go see. A lot of the tracks I would expect to see open houses in, there were no open houses. And then some of the open houses I went into, I was it. So, it was, the realtors were like the Maytag repairman. I was trying to keep them company. So it's really soft and slow out there. Things are selling. I would say down in this area, prices are flat. LA is a little softer, but it's still pretty steady. I still think if you can find a deal, go buy it, because when rates get lower at some point, you're going to have a mad dash with a million people that you're going to compete with. So better buy now and refi later.
All right, good to hear that the Wall Street Journal trying to keep up with you, Jeff, since I know you cover that beat very, very closely. And of course, a lot of nervousness now in Hollywood and how this strike situation is going to play out, how long it'll go, and whether this will also impact real estate. What buzz are you hearing about that now?
Well, I feel for the actors and the writers and all the people that work in that world. It's really hard, because they're out on strike, and I guess one of my friends was explaining to me that the people striking, it's sort of for minimum compensation. There's obviously the higher end writers and actors that negotiate deals on top of that. But Frank, for all these years I've been doing loans for the folks in the movie business in LA. I mean, they run from gig to gig, and they could be on a job for 3 months or 9 months, and then they don't know where their next check is coming from. So I do feel for them, and I feel for all these AI problems and streaming, and I hope they get some stability. They work hard and they deserve it.
And certainly is a ripple effect through the whole economy as this situation continues, and we'll follow it very, very closely here. Of course, Jeff, thank you very much for taking the call here on real estate and the mortgage business. That is Jeff Lazerson, the president of MortgageGrader.com and Orange County Register real estate columnist, live with us here tonight. Mottek On Money on 790 KABC and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast for you at KABC.com. We'll be back again tomorrow evening at 5. This is Mottek On Money on 790 KABC.